Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupada Ashtatar Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti-vedanta Narayan Gosvāmī Mahārāja Śrīla Gurudev Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupada Ashtatar Shatashmad Śrīla Vaman Gosvāmī Mahārāja Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupada Ashtatar Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti-vedanta Swami Mahārāja Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupada Ashtatar Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Gosvāmī Mahārāja Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupada Ashtatar Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Goksharas Babaji Mahārāja Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Mahārāja Ki Jai Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Ki Jai Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya Ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaura Premanande. Okay. Sorry I'm late today. I just came back from Godrum, actually, like just this minute. Where is the file? There it is. Gangeya champeya tared vinindi rochi pravaha snapitatma vrinde Panduka bandhu dyutiti vyavaso vrinde namaste charanaravindam bimbadaro dvitaramandahasa nasagramukta dyuti dipitase Vichitaratna Varanashiyade Vrinde Namaste Charanaravindam Samasta Vaikunta Shiromanoshri Krishna Savrinda Vanadanya Dami Tatadhikare Vrishabhanuputra Charanaravindam Vairagya Pallava Pushpa Bringa Mrigadi Birma Dava Keli Gunja Madhvadi Birpanti Vibhushamana Vrinde Namaste Charanaravindam Tardiya Duttena Nikunjayonon Adutkayo Keli Vilasa Sedi Tatsobhagyam kena niruchatam tad Vrinde namaste charanaravindam Rasabhilasha vasatishta vrinda Vanetare shangri saroja seva Labhya cha pungsam kripayata vaiva Vrinde namaste charanaravindam Tam kirta se satvatatanta vibhir Lila vidana kila Krishna shaktis Tavaiva murtes tulasi nriloke Vrinde namaste charanaravindam Bhaktya vihina aparada lakshai Kshiptashtaka ditaranga marte Kripa mai tvam sharanam prapana Vrinde namaste charanaravindam Vrindashtakamya shrunuyat paterva Vrindavanadisha padabja bringa Saprapya vrindavananetavasam Tat prema sevam labate kritartha Vrinde namaste Charanaravedam Vrinde Namaste Jaya Vrinda Devi Jai Vrinda Devi Vrinda Devi Jai Vrinda Devi Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi. Shri Keshavashtakam by Śrīla Rupa Gosvāmī. Let me make sure everything's running okay. Looks like it. Haribol Ram chemistry classes and Sunanda Didi and Shuddha Das. Dandavat Pranam. Nava Priya Kamanjari Rachita Karna Pura Shriyam Vinitra Taramalati Kalita Shekare Nojvala Tarochvasita Yutika Kratita Valgo Vaikakshaka O Praje Vijayinam Bhaje O Vipina Deshata Keshava Vishangi Manikastani Pranata Shringi Pinge Kshane Mridanga Mukhi Dhumale Shabali Hansi Vangshi Priye Iti Swasura Vikulam Taralam Abhayantam Mudha Praje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshatat Keshavam Kana Pranaya Meduran Madhura Narma Goshti Kala Vilasa Nilayan Milad Avivida Vesha Vedotina Sakena Tila Saraya Opati Shohasayantam Gira Vraje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshata Keshava Shamambu Kanika Vali Darabilida Gandantara Samura Giri Dhatuvir Likita Charupantram Kura Udancharali Mandali Duti Vidam Vivakralaka Praje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshata Keshava Nibadda Navatarnaka Vali Vilo Kanot Kantaya Natat Pura Putan Shalar Alugubir Bhuvam Kindatim Kalena Dhavala Ghatam Olagu Nirvartayantam Puro Vraje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshata Keshava Padankatati Birparam Virachayantam Advashiyam Chalad Taralanai Chiki Anichayaduli Dhumras Rajam Marulla Hari Chanchali Krita Dukula Chudanchala Braje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshata Keshava Vilasa Murali Kala Vani Virulla San Manasa Kshanara Kila Pallavi Apulakayantam Antarvihe Mohor Vidadatam Hridi Pramuditancha Goshteshware Vraje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshata Keshava Upetapati Sundari Tati Virabhira Vyarchita Smitankura Pitar Natarapanga Bhangi Shatai Stanastavaka Sanchara Nayana Chanchari Kanchala Vraje Vijayinam Bhaje Avipina Deshata Keshava idam nikila ballavi kula mahotsavo lasanam gramena kilaya puman patati shushtupadashtakam tam ujjvala dhyang sada nijapadaravinda-dvaye ratenda dada chanchalam sukayatad vishakasaka vraje vijayinam bhaje vipinate shata keshava vraje vijayinam bhaje avipinate shata keshava vraje vijayinam bhaje vipinate shata keshava vraje vijayinam bhaje avipinate shata keshava jaya keshavade 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 jaya keshavade jaya keshavade 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 jaya keshavade. Right, who's there? Haribol, Mitra Binda Didi, Dandavat Pranams. Radhe Radhe, and Haribol, Facebook user. Doesn't say your name. For some reason in the group, it doesn't say the name of anybody who's watching from the group, from the Facebook group. Alright, so this article I've actually never read before. So yeah, we're all reading it for the first time right now. This is by Śrīla Bhakti Kamala Madhusūdana Gosvāmī Mahārāja. He's actually the one who, let's see if it gives a bio about him. No, it doesn't. Wait, does it? No, it doesn't give a bio about him. But anyways, he's the one who my Gurudev, when he was still a brahmachari, what was his name back then? I think it was Nartam Ananda Prabhu? I think so. Anyways, he gave Katha, and my Gurudev heard him, and that was my Gurudev's first introduction to the Gaudiya Math. And very soon after that, he renounced his whole family and joined the Math. Asakti, deep attachment, is the innate tendency of the conscious being, and it cannot be separated from his constitutional nature, from his swarup. There is no room for analyzing and arguing against this point. So this deep attachment cannot be... Sorry, I thought about something else for a second, and so I just need to... Okay, so this deep attachment cannot be separated from our constitutional nature. There is no room for analyzing and arguing against this point. It is just like questioning why water is liquid and why fire has a burning potency. The liquidity of water and the burning potency of fire are their own natures, their individual tendencies. The relationship between the existence of an entity, the vastu, and its innate tendency is inseparable. Therefore, when we refer to any entity, its potency is also implied. Anurag, deep attachment. Anurag is the invaluable treasure that lies in the constitutional nature of the conscious being as his innate tendency. On the strength of this treasure, he can become qualified to achieve his priceless fortune. If a person claims that the conscious entity is devoid of this innate tendency, that is anurag, his words are as meaningless as declaring the existence of a flower in the sky. The anurag of the conscious entity is the sole cause of his exhibition of enjoyments in both the transcendental, the chit, and mundane, achit worlds. The existence of an entity which is devoid of enjoyment is not at all acceptable. Mukta pragraha vritti means the power or force of a word that expresses its highest meaning. In relation to the word vastu, the mukta pragraha vritti, the power or force of the word that expresses its highest meaning, accepts only one entity, Advitiya Vastu, that entity who is one without a second. That Advitiya Vastu is fully composed of anurag, of loving attachment. For the purpose of vilas, for enjoyment, for pastimes, he has manifested himself in many conscious forms. Vilas between that singular conscious entity and the many conscious entities who are endowed with anurag, with loving attachment, alone gives rise to indescribable bliss. The hankering to attain this bliss, this ananda, is the conscious being's sole inspiration to engage in various types of karma and activity. Thus we see that viraga, attachment, or asakti, these both mean attachment, is the constitutional nature of the conscious being. The root meaning of vairagya. The word vairagya has been formed by adding a suffix, shanya, to the word viraga. Virag means a vishesh rag, or asakti, a specific a specific attachment, and vigata rag, or anasakti, being devoid of attachment or detachment. Whoa, so it means specific attachment, or it means being devoid of attachment, detachment. Both things like opposites. Therefore, vairagya is the import of virag. This implies both profuse attachment, asakti, for the reality, and detachment, anasakti, from the non-reality. Okay, yeah, because like this V can mean vishesh, and this V can also mean vigata. Okay, so vishesh and vigata. The V stands for both things. This attachment and detachment, when duly enacted towards reality and non-reality respectively, is called Yukta-vairāgya. In other words, any atomic conscious jiva's special attachment for the infinite conscious entity, Bhagavan, along with his detachment from the illusory objects, is called Yukta-vairāgya. So the jiva's special attachment for Bhagavan and his detachment from Maya, from illusory objects. This is Yukta-vairāgya. It is the natural disposition of the pure atomic conscious jiva to be full of anurag, of deep attachment for the infinite conscious Bhagavan. And it is Bhagavan's natural disposition to be full of anurag for the pure jiva. The jiva's false identity. Overcome by the valor of Maya, which is endowed with a potency that can make the impossible possible, agatan gatayan patiyasi. The atomic conscious jiva falsely considers the material body to be himself, thus causing a disorder in his above-mentioned innate nature. In this state of disordered consciousness, the jiva identifies himself with gross and subtle bodies to which he has been designated, and his attachment to objects other than Bhagavan stands as his acquired or distorted nature, nisarga. False knowledge in the form of identifying oneself with the body is born of ignorance, of avidya. This false knowledge so greatly expands its influence upon the jiva that he cannot maintain the conception that he is an entity different from the body. This alone is his distorted intelligence, his vivarta buddhi. Dehe atma buddhi e vivarter stan. It is the false bodily conception of the self that is an illusion. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 7:123. This condition is unnatural from the perspective of the jiva's swarup, the jiva's constitutional position, but he cannot remove it by himself. Surrender, the expression of sambandha gyan. The weak jiva, overcome by insurmountable maya, has no hope except sharanapati, accepting the shelter at the lotus feet of the omnipotent Bhagavan. Daivihesha gunamayi mama maya durattaya Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam te tam taranti te. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three gunas, which bewilders the jiva, is certainly very difficult to overcome. But those who take exclusive shelter of me can easily transcend it. Bhagavad Gita 7:8. Sharanapati is an expression of Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of one's specific relationship with Krishna. Sambandha Gyan alone enables the jiva to accept shelter at the lotus feet of Bhagavan. The 6 limbs of surrender, Sharanagati, are evidently manifest in Yukta-vairāgya only. Oh, this is the verse that we're learning. Tomorrow this is the day where everybody's supposed to start learning this. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptritve varanam tata atmanikshepa karpanye shadvida sharanagati. The 6 divisions of surrender are the acceptance of that which is favorable to devotional service, the rejection of that which is unfavorable, the conviction that Krishna will give protection, the acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian or master, full self-surrender, and humility. This is quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas 11:676. And this actually comes from something called the Lakshmi Tantra. In his explanation of this verse, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written, Dainyayatmani vedana goptrite varan avashya rakshibe Krishna vishvasa palan bhakti anukula matra karyera shrikar bhakti pratikula bhava varjanangikar sharanga sharanagati hoibe jahar tahara prarthana shune Shinanda Kumar. Humility, self-dedication, accepting Krishna as one's only maintainer and guardian, having complete conviction that he will surely protect us, accepting things favorable for devotional service, and rejecting the unfavorable. One who submits unconditionally to this 6-fold process of surrender has his prayers heard by the divine son of Nanda, Nanda Kumar. This is from the introduction song of Sharanagati. A surrendered bhakta who is endowed with Yukta-vairāgya achieves perfection in the attainment of his ultimate goal, prem. Of this there is no doubt. It is not possible for a person to enter the path of sadhan if he is not surrendered. And an absence of surrender is due to an indifference to Sambandha Gyan, the knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. Moreover, it is impossible for a person devoid of Sambandha Gyan to adopt Yukta-vairāgya. Only one who has knowledge of the 5 types of relationship, that is, between Bhagavan and the Jiva, Bhagavan and Jada, Bhagavan and matter, the Jiva and another Jiva, Jiva and matter, and matter, different forms of matter, can perform Hari Bhajan without disturbance. Only somebody who understands these 5 things. One with Sambandha Gyan accepts Bhagavan as an unrestrained enjoyer. In the light of his Sambandha Gyan, a Yukta-vairāgya, a proper renunciate, can maintain appropriate dealings with everything because he knows the mutual relationships of the different entities. Dealings that are devoid of Sambandha Gyan are illicit. And Yukta-vairāgya, self-enjoyment, bhog, and false renunciation, tyag, are not at all acceptable. The 100% consideration is to act solely for the pleasure of the worshipful object, the Sevya Vastu. The enjoyer is one without a second, and the enjoyed is many. This statement itself gives the instruction on Yukta-vairāgya. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijananti tatvena taschavantite. I am the only master enjoyer of all yagyas, but those who do not recognize my swarup repeatedly wander in the cycle of birth and death. Bhagavad Gita 9:24. Bhagavan says, I alone am the enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. One who is ignorant of my nature as the enjoyer falls from his approach to philosophical reality and thus takes repeated births. A Vairagya, a renunciate, who is not Yukta, who is not properly connected, because his Sambandha Gyan, his relationship with Krishna, is absent, cannot give up his enjoying ego. Thus cast in the cycle of birth and death, he only undergoes the suffering of coming and going in this material world. A jiva cannot become free from the attraction and repulsion of Maya merely by bhog, by enjoyment, and tyag, renunciation. Here, the path to be adopted by a person desirous of his spiritual welfare is to accept, among all types of sense objects, only those that are his dire necessity. He considers what to accept on the basis of what is favorable for Hari Bhajan, and what to reject on the basis of what is unfavorable. This indeed is Yukta-vairāgya. In other words, on the positive side, there is attachment to Krishna, anurag, and in negation, there is detachment from all objects other than Krishna. A person has to simultaneously cultivate both types of vairagya, in which personal enjoyment and the renunciation of sense objects is not considered. Rather, when a person accepts Krishna, the master of all the universes, as the supreme enjoyer, his prominent consideration is to serve him with everything within the universe, and then to accept his remnants. The master's possessions are neither to be enjoyed nor renounced by the servant. This is an important sentence. The master's possessions are neither to be enjoyed nor renounced by the servant. So we're not supposed to renounce the master's possessions. The path to attain natural anurag for Krishna, by purifying one's consciousness is beyond the concepts of enjoyment and renunciation. See, look, here's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur riding in a car, which at that time was like a very controversial thing. That was like, sadhus don't ride in cars. Characteristics of Yukta-vairāgya. In his book, Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Gosvāmī Pad has given the definition and characteristics of Yukta-vairāgya. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate prapanchikataya buddha hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubhi parityago vairagyam falgukatyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of its relationship to Krishna is not complete in his renunciation. He is not as complete in his renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 255 to 256. Yukta-vairāgya is to accept that which is related to Krishna. This is done by acquiring in a mood of detachment an appropriate amount of sense objects favorable to the performance of one's sadhana bhakti. While ascertaining the purport of the above verse, my Sri Guru Pad Padma, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, has written, Asakti Rahita Sambandha Sahita Vishaya Sumuhu Sakali Madhava. Free from all false attachment, the Yukta-vairāgya, the proper renunciate, sees everything in relationship to Madhav and understands that everything is meant for his pleasure. The essence of Sambandha Gyan is hidden in a nutshell in the above statement. He sees everything in relationship to Madhav and understands that everything is meant for his pleasure. Right? Is that what it said? Yes. The essence of Sambandha Gyan is hidden in a nutshell in the above statement. Sudarshan, the real vision. The sadhak who is devoid of attachment to sense objects and established in real vision, Sudarshan, knows that everything is meant exclusively for Krishna's enjoyment. In the bound state, the false ego of being the enjoyer engages the jiva in sense enjoyment. A mood of being the enjoyer, the Purushabhiman, is prominent in all jivas, gripped by avidya, be their bodies male or female. When the jiva's consciousness is in the distorted state, his knowledge that Bhagavan alone is Advitiya Bhokta, the unparalleled enjoyer, and the master of all conscious and unconscious entities, remains lost. By associating with a sadhu and hearing spiritually conscious words emanating from his lotus mouth, however, the knowledge appears within him, related to Swasarup, his own Sarup, his own constitutional position, and Parasarup, the Sarup of Bhagavan and his potencies, Viruddha Sarup, the Sarup of Maya, and Sadhan Sarup, the nature of the process and the goal. To the extent that his Sambandha Gyan is nourished, his enjoying propensity diminishes and a service attitude becomes prominent. At that time, he no longer sees the world as meant for his enjoyment. Rather, his vision is transformed into Seva Darshan, or Sudarshan, real vision. This means that he sees everything in relationship to Krishna and as meant for his service. By the influence of this Sudarshan, he sees that all the conscious and unconscious entities of the world have a relationship with Krishna. Considering himself a servant and Krishna as worshipful, he sees everything as an instrument in the service to him. And he develops a worshipful attitude a puja buddhi towards them. There is no room for an enjoying attitude when a worshipful attitude is present. When a worshipful attitude is present. Properly directed attachment, asakti. In the conditioned state, the living entity's attachment, his asakti, is absorbed in matter and it becomes the cause of his repeated birth and death. However, by the influence of Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of one's relationship with his relationship with Krishna, when that very asakti is directed towards Sri Hari, Guru, and Vaishnavas, it gives rise to the jiva's eternal auspiciousness. Bhagavan Kapila Dev directed the following words to his mother Devahuti. Prasangam ajaram pasham atmanam kavayo vidu sa eva sadhushu krito moksha dvaram apavritam. Learned people say that attachment alone causes the living entity's strong bondage to this world. However, if that same attachment is directed towards a saintly person, it becomes the door to moksha, which is the secondary result of one-pointed bhakti. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25-20. The material asakti, attachment, that is in the heart of the jiva who has been averse to Krishna since beginningless time is very deep-rooted. Because of this perverted asakti, he identifies himself with the body. Sorry, I have something stuck in my throat. Because of this perverted asakti, he identifies himself with the body that he has attained as a result of his actions and thinks that his sole aim is to attain sense enjoyment by any means. Now the following question arises. How, in such a state, can he lift the anchor of his deep-rooted material asakti and direct it towards Krishna? This is undoubtedly extremely difficult. Even by performing austere vrats over a prolonged period of time, Jnanis and yogis are unsuccessful in their efforts to destroy their mundane attachment. It is not easy to become attached to an entity that is unmanifest, beyond the scope of speech and mind, by giving up one's attachment to the temporarily pleasing objects of the senses. In this difficult task, our only support is to follow the scientific process that has been presented by the Sattvata Shastras, as scriptures followed by those who worship Bhagavan. The process adopted by those who are averse to accepting the purports of the Sattvata Shastras and who cultivate paths other than bhakti are improper and temporary. One can never achieve proper and permanent results by a temporary process. Whenever the means and the goal of a path are different, one should know that path to be temporary. A higher taste. The Sattvata Shastras state, Vishaya vinivartante nira harasya dehina rasa varjan rasopyasa param drishta nivartate. He who identifies himself with his body may artificially restrict his enjoyment by withdrawing the senses from their objects, but his taste for sense pleasure will still remains. His taste for sense pleasure still remains. However, for one who is sthita pragya, having the darshan of Paramatma, his taste for sense objects automatically ceases. Bhagavad Gita 2:59. There are jivas who do not accept sense objects through their senses. Even though they seem to be temporarily aloof from them, their attachment to these sense objects does not cease. A taste for sense objects automatically ceases. Automatically ceases, however, in those who are sthita pragya, established in perfect knowledge, having realized Paramatma. Enjoyable sense objects are worthless. Enjoyable sense objects are worthless, insignificant, and distressful, but in the conditioned state they appear useful, significant, and pleasure-giving. This is all due to bewilderment caused by delusion. Until one does not attain the quest for the higher entity, and thereby a higher taste, he will naturally have an attachment and taste for lower objects. The mind is attracted to relishing different kinds of ras, different kinds of tastes. As soon as it relishes a higher ras, a natural detachment, Vairagya, for the lower ras appears. The 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the ears, the nose, tongue, the eyes, and skin, are bound by a tendency to be fascinated, and they chase with great speed the 5 sense objects of sound, smell, taste, form, and touch, with the purpose of enjoying them. Trying to check the intense speed of the senses towards their objects through the artificial means of yam, niyam, and so on, can undoubtedly stop them. Can stop them temporarily. However, since the mind is full of aversion to Krishna because of the absence of any higher support or taste, after some time the tendencies of the checked senses take on a new, stronger form and are forced to run towards their objects with much greater speed than before. The tendency to enjoy the respective sense objects with the help of the senses is naturally present in a mind that is averse to the service of Bhagavan. The mind becomes disturbed by seeing beautiful forms, and as a result, a person experiences obstacles in his sadhana. It is therefore correct to conclude that if he destroys his 2 eyes, and thereby his capacity to see any form with his external senses, his mind's desire to see form will also cease. The act of seeing can be performed with the help of the mind, even if both eyes are closed. Therefore, a person should understand that he cannot stop the desire for sense enjoyment merely by controlling the external senses. The hankering to see mundane forms, rup, can only be completely checked by seeing higher, transcendental forms, aprakrita rup. For this reason only, the word rasa varjam has been used in the aforementioned verse. The word ras means rag, or asakti. Rasa varjam means attachment that does not cease. Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padaravinda. Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padaravinde nava nava rasadham anudyata rantumasit. Tadavadi bata nari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara shushtu nishti vanamcha. Oh, I get it now. It's bhavati mukha vikara. Okay, anyways. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the very thought, and my lips curl with distaste. Sri Yamunacharya. The sense objects of smell, taste, touch, sound, and form are present in Sri Krishna Chandra in an unprecedented and wonderful manner. They are unparalleled and filled with unlimited sweetness. When the slightest whiff of his fragrance enters our senses, it bestows indescribable bliss upon them. The conscious entity's every desire finds perfection in Sri Krishna Chandra alone. It is therefore not surprising that after attaining him, the mind becomes indifferent to all else. This is the only reasonable and logical path by which to attain freedom from the witch of Maya. Tam eva viditvati mritum eti nanya panta vidyate ayanaya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no other way to achieve this perfection. Shvetashvatar Upanishad 3.8. Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of the wish-fulfilling tree of the Vedas, has appeared for the sole purpose of bestowing upon us information about this unprecedented ras. The most magnanimous avatar, Bhagavan Sri Gaur Sundar, has bestowed this anarpita prem ras to everyone. He's bestowed this anarpita prem ras to everyone, irrespective of caste or custom, or if they are rich or poor. When Yukta-vairāgya is adopted, this extremely rare prem, which is not even accessible to demigods and avatars such as Ananta Shesh, can be attained by means of Shravan, Kirtan, and so on. Wow, this article is long. Okay. Don't deceive yourself. It is next to impossible to attain that prem without following the path shown by Sri Gaur Sundar. Those who are engaged in sense enjoyment on the pretext of Yukta-vairāgya, or who imitate the natural Vairagya characterized by the Vipralamba of the Ragatmika Vrajavasis, become sense enjoyers or false renunciates, Falgu Vairagis. They thus deceive themselves and are deprived of the relish of this ras. For those who are sincerely hankering to relish prem ras, as experienced by Sriman Mahaprabhu and his prominent associates such as Sri Sarup Damodar, Sri Rupa, Sanatan, Raghunath Das, Sri Jiva Gosvāmī, and the Mahajans following them, it is imperative to exclusively follow the path shown by them by adopting Yukta-vairāgya. Yukta-vairāgya, true renunciation. Markata-vairāgya na koro loka dekhaya, yatta yoga vishay bhunja anasakta hoya. You should not make yourself a show bottle devotee and become a false renunciate. This is Mahaprabhu's instructions to Raghunath Das Goswami. For the time being, enjoy the material world in a befitting way and do not become attached to it. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 16.238. Antare nishta koro bahye lokya vyavahara achirat Krishna tomai koribe udhar. Within your heart, you should remain very faithful, but externally, you may behave like an ordinary man. Thus, Krishna will soon be very pleased and deliver you from the clutches of Maya. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 16.239. So externally, we can behave like an ordinary man. We don't show what's in our heart. Most importantly, it is obligatory for anyone who desires his own auspiciousness to remember the above instruction of Mahaprabhu to Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Yavata syatsun nirvaha svikuryat tavad artavit adike nyunatayang cha chavate paramarthata. The bare necessities of life must be accepted, but one should not superfluously? I don't even know how to say it. Superfluously increase his necessities. One should not excessively increase his necessities, nor should they be unnecessarily decreased. One should simply accept what is necessary to help one advance spiritually. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.108. Those who know the import of Shastra should accept only as many sense objects as they need to easily perform their bhakti. A person will have to deviate from the path of spiritual welfare if he accepts more than his necessities or less than them. A sadhak jiva will attain perfection in sadhana by accepting those sense objects that are essential for him to render service to Krishna while giving up any absorption in them. Those who are advanced in sadhana and who have entered the path of rag, which is characterized by natural attachment for Krishna, naturally become slack in the rules and regulations of Vaidhi Bhakti. Until rag has risen, one is obliged to follow the path of Vaidhi Bhakti. Persons in an immature state who show indifference to the rules and regulations eventually become sense enjoyers, or false renunciates. Those who remain conscious of attaining prem, the primary goal of human life, and to this end advance on the path of sadhana by sincerely begging for the mercy of Sri Guru and Vaishnavas, will undoubtedly attain the perfection of their goal. Translated from Sri Bhakti Kamala Bhakti Surab, and appearing in English for the first time by Raise the Harmonist team. This is in the Kartik 2002 edition of Raise the Harmonist, number 11. Alright, I don't want to miss Prasad, and they already started serving like 10 minutes ago, so I'm going to just do a very quick Maha Mantra, and then Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Jai Shri Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Shri Param Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Rupanagu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Kamal Madhusūdana Gosvāmī Mahārāja Ki Jai, Swapashad Shri Gaur Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Shri Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shinitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo, Vrindai Tulsi Devai, Priyai Keshavashacha, Krishna Bhakti Padadevi, Sattvatai Namo Namaha, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sandubhyai Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams.